So I'm not really certain which coloring book I like the most, so I'm just going to start with the ones I got. I mean, I also got, for my students, I always get reference books anyway. So I was like really interested in this just to have like ideas and things like just so that way when I always have that one kid who's just like, not this morning, I don't have any new fresh ideas. It's really nice just to have like nom books and everything like that just laying around. So my sis actually picked this one up because I got the coloring books, but for the life of me, I was like out of stock every time I just wanted to get the pictures. I use the coloring books for tracing reasons, not to they color in the books, but just so they have line work to look at. So this one's really great. I mean, this one's a Five Below. That's why I like it too, because I can get more than one copy for like $15 instead of spending like $20 or $30 a book. But as you can see, it's got like lots of different imageries and different kinds of sushi characters and stuff. And it's really good for when you're really trying to get someone to finish or fill an entire sketchbook. This is a great resource for that. I did see this coloring book, and then they also have this one. Now, this one I got a few months ago, like 3 months ago, I think. And then this one I just grabbed the other day because they were restocking. But I could have sworn I saw this one as well, but I just started this one. I know I paint, we do color pencils and we do markers. So if I had to judge, I would honestly say that this one is better for the beginner, just because there's more space. It's probably easier to use watercolors and things because of the larger vector areas. I'm going to say the other one has more line work. This one, I like it because if you trace it, you can delete things that you don't want to paint, and it's very easy to see these lines. These lines are a lot thicker. This one also had more animal characters in it, and generic characters. So like they definitely are just like not from a specific anime or anything like that, but just still in a nice cartoon style. I don't think it's completely like what most people call authentic anime styles, but it's cartoonish, so it fits there. I think I like this one more because it's more traditional, I guess, like our original anime style. So this one seems a little bit more familiar and fun to me. I just liked also the fact that this one had more details. So this one I definitely would encourage like trace over it with your light board or scan it into for digital painting. But I thought this one was better for creating a lot of mixed media pieces, and also just if you need fill-in. So like in the manga, if you needed like little conversation boxes or something like that, this one has like tons of like details. If you wanted a different eye, this one has my favorite eye sets, I guess, for anime styles. And so that's why I would recommend this book. But other than that, I've been ripping stuff out and painting out of this one, especially like ones like this are like so cute to do washes over. So that's what I'm gonna do. I just always get people who are like, why and will you get these books? And I'm just like, I like sketching, especially ones like this, showing students how you can turn it into like fun artwork. And most important thing is having fun with it. I'm very concerned with it becoming out perfect, and that's a challenge for like all artists. So it's always a goal with me to like work on that because I told them like I'm working on it too. So don't be embarrassed. I don't think they tear out very easily, and I definitely like work like binding like multiple times to get pages to come loose, and they were not coming. So I will say if you're worried about tearing, there's a huge concern with this one, not so much with this book. This one wasn't that bad for tearing pages out of. That's because you can get all the way to the binding, and also it's perforated in this one. This one's not, and I kind of wish it was. It looked like maybe some of the pages had been, but it is really hard to get some of these pages to like tear properly. So if you got an X-Acto blade or something like that, that's all I would recommend, or a pair of scissors. Keep them handy and tear those out. I thought I had a blade nearby. Well, I thought I had a knife. Well, you can go on your back drawer. But yeah, I would just always have one of these also handy. Because, like I said, if it's resistant or doesn't come perforated, I feel like with a book like this, I don't know why they wouldn't. Like this paper is actually thinner in this book. So that's why I kept saying color pencil or your, maybe a little bit of marker work. But this one's like a lot better for like mixed media reasons. But yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and rip the rest of the binding to let these pages go so that way I can make my art out of this stuff. But I don't need them like attached to the book. I work on things individually a lot of times, so don't really need it in there. And if this isn't like your work table, don't forget to use a cutting board. Like this is on my art table, so I don't know. It got moved in here for the purposes of art making, so I'm not very concerned about it. But if it isn't your art table, make sure you're like, use a self-healing board or something like that underneath of it. Um, but yeah, I would honestly keep like the covers 9 times out of 10, but anything is useless. And I do think it's like nice to get in touch with your, it's like for relief stress coloring. Um, and it's really good if you just never dry makeup. My only complaint is that the paper on this one's thicker. I just wish it was perforated in that book. And in this one, the paper is thinner, but then they perforated it for you to tear out so you can color individual sheets. And I love how this one's more geared to adults, and they should know that we're ripping it out of the paper if we're going to paint it or anything like that, but they did not. So again, I'm just going to pick one for fun. Show you what I like to do with them. So once you have that plugged in, you just want to power it up. And once you power that up, you want to put the image you want. And I think the only other bad things, keep in mind, it says 2 images. But usually what they do is they had a red image on one side and a black one on the other, so which is why I still recommend it. So just keep in mind it might be hard to see some lines, but I'm going to turn it vertical actually because of this image. And then you just want to pick your favorite painting or mixed media paper, and I just overlap it like that. And I would just get something that is not bleeding. Like I wouldn't use one of your bleeding markers of any kind. I would use like ballpoint pens, pencil, drafting, chalk, something like that. So you can see what you're working with. And again, if there's something you don't want, what I always tell people to do when you start tracing an image over so that way you can start coloring on it is you don't need everything. It is absolutely okay to just trace what you need. So that being said, I am going to go ahead and start tracing real quick. So I'm blow my screen up for you guys so you can see that. There you go. And make sure you always put pressure down so you can see the lines really well. But I'm just going to go ahead and keep tracing real quick. And just give me an idea, some boundaries and some outlines to stay within. So that looks like a finished transferred sketch to me. And again, I'm just using a pen to go over top of those. And then, you can check by turning off the light. And if you're happy with your transfer, you can move this. So that's it without the light. Something else on my desk is I got my heat gun out, of course. So again, I'm not going to throw this away, but it's always see how nice that is to like transfer. It's going to make it a lot easier to color it. So I'm just going to leave that to the side and not in trash. And then I'm going to just reach over here with my markers and pens. I always have white gel pens, black gel pens. So just keep in mind, you should always have some white gel is my preference, and then some black ink. Indian ink, regular ink, just as long as it flows. I also have some acrylic ones too, but just for today's purposes, they're there. So I just like to pause in between steps, but that's like my first one. So I'm going to talk about supplies for a minute before I start rolling through anything else. Hey again. Coffee break. So what I'm going to probably do is set up with the wet first, because what I'm going to do is use a heat gun in order to dry in between layers, and then usually from there markers like the last things I get to usually, unless it's for skin tones. Now you can set a skin tone pretty quickly with marker, which I'll show you, but the majority of like my backgrounds and things like that, I like to do washes. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and prep real quick. I think I'm going to dig out my tape and set this down so that way you can watch me go through this process. But just to warn in advance, I like layers and drying in between layers and letting them set so that way I can use texture. And color pencils, markers, and watercolors and gouaches play so well together because they're all flat mediums. You can pull off some 3D effects, but I love the fact that they settle together really nicely, and you can seal them all together. Acrylics I usually try to stay away from, unless I'm on canvas or things like that, because the weight of them. And so I'll kind of explain that on a different piece, but on this one, that's the reason why I'm picking these mediums, is they're all flat mediums that are going to seal together really nicely, and also dry pretty quickly. So as I'm drinking my coffee, I'm going to start taping this down. I like this one for Five Below too. This one was thinner paper. Definitely use dry mediums only on it. It's perforated, so you can actually tear the sheets out of this book, which is really good. And these ones are very generic, so like you're not gonna like see some references to an anime of any kind or manga. So that one's from Five Below for just $5. And I really like the cover. Super freaking cute. It's so cute, so cool. And again, this is like this one, you don't have to trace over everything, but I do notice that there's a lot more white spaces. So there's not as much detail in this book. If you really like anime, especially watching it, and you want something that looks a little bit closer, I would recommend the other book. So that would be this one, which we got the page from this. These ones are more geared towards teens and adults. A lot more details in this book. The paper is thicker. It's not perforated, so I definitely used a knife to cut the pages out of this book in order to use them. And that's so that way you can like trace the pages over and over again. So again, this is what it looks like in the book, but you'll notice this paper is extremely thin. So if you like markers or heavy mediums like me, and gouaches or watercolor or anything like that, you want to transfer it to something else so you can also use it again. I like all the details. I mean, there's a lot of pages in this book, so you'll definitely have fun going through this one. And so you can see more details. Kind of looks like Sakura card chapter on this one. but I got some more details. So I got some raccoons in that one. And so I'm just gonna start coloring that one and go for the next piece. And again, I'm gonna do is pick up something black and black marker and everything, and I'm just gonna start filling in the eyes. And again, I didn't throw my reference away, but I'm just not going to rely on it at all. So again, I'm gonna start filling in just some of the dark spaces. So just the dark spots before I start using anything else. And don't forget, you know, heat guns are good for drying marker too. It's not just for the paint. And actually, this is something else I'm going to change. They like filling in the whole eye, which makes it easier and definitely more friendlier to the beginner artist. But I actually like color in my anime eyes, so I'm definitely not filling it completely black like it's recommending. So another thing about markers, I always test on another piece of paper. So always have your scrap paper, as we like to call it, on the side. So have like an extra piece of paper, and swatch colors before you use them. So I don't know if I want that color. That's a nice pink. I think we're gonna go with this one. So I got like lots of markers. I always like laugh at some people who are just like using the most expensive markers on the planet, and I'm just like, you know, I think there's like plenty of decent markers out there without spending a crazy amount of money. Oh, no, that one's much better. I like that color. No, you know, I'm just gonna keep swatching until I find one. So like, and that's ooh, that's pretty, but I don't want to use it on this piece. And we'll fight the colors. There's another. Um, thing I do love about like teaching anime classes a lot of the time is, always reminding my students of how much it has changed and how much more variety we have out there and everything. So that's a pretty good. Just doing swatches just to figure out which one I want to use. I want to use that one. I have a whole lot of skin colors, which I hope you do too if you're, getting into ones that have so many different colors to use. Oh, maybe I want to use that for that. That's peachy. Oh, yep. That one's nailed it. This one. So I think I had a deeper peach over here. I did. So that was this one. So what I'm going to do after I'm done swatching all these is like, I'm like, for example, I'm like, oh my gosh, I like this for a hint of a lip color. So there's some lips. And I always like putting blush around eyes and around people's noses. And remember, shapes are always like go back to your basics with like how do I fill in the shadow? They're very geometric in most animes. It's a couple that are very soft. You got some like clamp, and especially if you're into like collecting the art books, which I love doing as well. So, there's a shadow on her neck. And don't forget, markers are drying, so don't like overfill if you're not comfortable. Is like it is okay to go back to a section later. But I'm definitely doing some effects right now, so I'm in the shadows first, girl. And skin colors and other places. So if I'm using this, I'm gonna go here and outline around the hands, because your knuckles will be a flesh tone too. I'm gonna put a shadow right here on this part of her hand and curl it up. Not a nail color I want to do yet, but so there goes one. Looks good to me. This is also like a scrap paper. You're like, I don't remember which one I wanted to use, but I always have like 3 colors rolling whenever I'm about to do some skin time. So
Abby's one stay with me.
okay.
Fine. You tell Abby I am the boot.
And so now I'm going to take this darker one, and this one's because these are, it's underneath so many layers that I'm just going to make this a third colored shadow. So there you go. And I feel like that covers all the skin tones I was looking at, and looks pretty good. And see how handy some scrap is. And since that's over, I'm just like touching up the lips after the fact. Now I'm gonna go back to one of these other pinks, I think, for the nails, just because I like to add some warmth to those as well. And then I pick my eye color since I got all that swatched out. These markers here off to the side. I think I'm just going to use warm color. I'm gonna go warm. I think I like that. And so that fills all that in. Yeah, it's looking great so far. So I'm going to hit this with some heat just so it dries a little bit. And it should dry pretty fast. See if I know confidence is maximum that for me. While I'm on this, actually, I'm going to go ahead and take some, not highlights yet. I'm going to show those too, but with my colored pencil, I'm actually going to get some orange out real quick and touch up these eyes over here. So you can see, I'm going to be able to use this pencil right on top of it since I dried it really well. And what you can also notice, you can take some of that orange back over the black, get a nice layering, and warm up some of the black a little bit so the black's not all like blue. And the same thing that's what I was mentioning with the lip color. If you didn't want to do it with marker, that was actually something you could alternatively have done with pencil. So if you're more comfortable with that, you could, as you can see, add in the lip color with that. And the same thing with nail color. You could have gone in after you did the marker with the color pencil. So good. So as I got my scrap paper out, I'm going to go ahead and wash now. And I like washing from background, so definitely don't want, you know, to overload anything. But I definitely like using colors like that over the whole background. And I'm actually going to get spritz ball out. I'll probably use some gouaches today just because I really like a lot of these colors because I'm thinking I'm going to be on the pastels range for the background. I don't want to go too dark today. Um, I don't always use like free colors, but there's a color I use a lot of. I definitely like love it if I can get like a lot of it. So you've been painting for a while, you kind of have like some go-tos that are part of your style. Whew, can't tell you how much I love rags. So I'm going to use a light yellow, I think, to go ahead and wash most of the background. Gonna just go washing with it. And wash is like, you know, this diluted background. It dries pretty quick too. For a brush, I don't know. I might be like jumping in between different ones. Might use my slanted flat or a round. And I'm gonna get this brush really wet, really wet. I'm gonna take a little bit off to the side. I do have a mister, but I only mist if it's like the wash is the first step and I'm doing marker and stuff over top of it, not if it's like after the fact. That's just no. So I'm gonna actually make my wash on like a separate outside of the palette and scooping paint over to it. So scoop and then dilute. You can totally use your acrylic paint thinners and things like that if you like using those too. There's definitely like a benefit to it. These are really nice. I love these colors. Soft pastels. Remember, gouaches are like pretty much like in between watercolors and acrylics because they have like the color pigmentation of acrylics, but they're gonna lay flat and dry faster like an illustrated one when it comes to painting many layers and using other mediums as well, like especially like inking your work. Or acrylic, definitely, I'm just like, I don't know. It plays nicely with like latexes and other enamels and things, but I wouldn't say it plays nicely with like putting colored pencil, for example, over top of it. Now I'm using craft acrylic paint. They have a different medium in them. So I am talking about your normal acrylics, which have a lot of body and things like that to them. And I don't mind if my wash like runs over some of her hair. It's just like I want it brighter at the top if possible. So I'm trying to preserve like the whites. Because remember, I always say if you know something's going to end up being white or have highlights in it, you can, you know, kind of preserve some space for that. I think for her hair, I had picked a marker color I liked as well, but I think I was gonna get like burnt sienna hair and a smaller brush, perhaps. No, this will do it because I want to get some flow in there. Brown. And yes, I'm using a little bit of the yellow. That way it doesn't look like I'm completely introducing like a whole new color. And I want this to be the lightest brown tone. It's still got some warmth in it. So when you see me adding some water, I don't want it to dry at the darkest. And you can totally dry this out on your scrap paper first if you're worried about the color. That's another reason why I said don't let it go anywhere just yet. But I tested quite a few colors for the lip and hair, so I don't want to give myself like too many options is a bad thing as well. And again, I am washing in her hair now. So I got like one of my favorite pencils out in the whole wide world. And I imagine everyone's got like their own favorites, but I am like one of those people like I have to have actual black, more black, and I need to know the differences. So Jet Black X Smooth Prismacolor, I use this a lot. Um, everything needs to be marker over top your art piece, but this is like legit like black. So when I'm shading within everything, I kind of trust it. So especially like if I'm just going in and I want to add some little shadows here and there or go back in lightly with black and I don't want to pour ink, this is great for this. Um, when I'm actually going to do my colors real quick and see what I got for some dark yellows as well. I'm just going to start shading this in too. And I'm just going into those notes that we got from the imagery. You could have used marker too, but I wanted some texture on my bow, so I don't want it to be too flat. Plus, it's also about control. Like there's some things I can pull off with a pencil that I just don't do with a marker because it feels differently when you're like shading with it. So that's the other reason why. But I'm going to add some texture on here. And and I already did that on the face. Love adding details like that around hands, hair, accessories, jewelry, glasses, especially sunglasses or anything that kind of reflects like multicolor light off of the lenses, like cameras or weaponry and things like that in other video games. So I'm just going into the details of this outfit. And again, this is fabric, so that's why I'm choosing to use the color pencil on this part of our outfit. You're probably going to see me do something differently for the hair here in a minute, but I'm going to continue just laying in some shadows. And these are like medium shadows, so I don't need them to be like black at the darkest level. I mean, she's actively wearing this in a brightly lit area, so I just want to show where the crevices are and creases in her clothing. And this is another Prismacolor right away, so it's really nice. It's another orangey yellow. They got lots of bright tones. So that's it with this, I think, for now. I'm just gonna put it to the side in case we need it. You know, don't ever use them, but you know, swatch them and make sure like, okay, that's the color over here. So we have to take a piece of scrap paper and swatch it. So this way I know which one I use for that. And go over here and start swatching my markers for hair. And then I'm gonna pull out with my nice dark browns. That's why I was like, it's okay to use a ballpoint pen in the beginning for your traces because you might not use black to outline a lot of the colors. If you want to do that, you can totally like go in black and white too of a lot of pieces. But I really wanted to use a brown tone, something warm and chocolatey. Makes you think I'm probably going to do a seasonal piece after this one. And I'm probably going to take me a coffee break or refill my coffee at this point. So that's the brown. And again, swatch it on some scrap paper to the side. I'm gonna take a couple break over there. This is looking pretty good. So again, I've been using my Prismacolors just like add some shadows and things like that and texture. Same thing with like the hair. I wanted darker shadows, so I wanted something saturated, so I chose a marker. Um, I don't know if I ever do a video on all the markers I own. I have like 4 different brands, it seems like. I have, like I said before, like tried like store-bought markers like ones at Five Below and some other ones, and I definitely think they're great for like writing and doing like edging and things like that. I don't know if I would use them art-wise because the flow is wrong and the way they disperse kind of messes you up, or they dry out, or they need to get hydrated more often than professional markers do. And professional markers too, just some hacks you can always find on YouTube on how to like, you know, rehydrate them or keep them going, or if they act up, how to change the tips and things like that. And the same thing, can change the tips probably more easier on a professional marker than normal ones. But I'm like almost done with this piece. Now, as for what's in the background, I know some people want full color, but I like backgrounds to be behind my portraits and not seeming like they're in the same surface plane as the person's hair or things like that, unless it's interacting with the person. And seeing that it just looks like wallpaper-ish, I'm gonna kind of go with that, especially since I faded out the bottom part of her dress. So I'm probably not going to make those sugar cubes and everything really pop. Might add some highlights on the pots and stuff like that, just so they seem more ceramic. But that's probably as far as I'm going to go. I'm not going to add a ton of colors to the background. I'm really focused on making her pop and come forward. So that's on purpose. You definitely could go reverse though and flatten the plane and make everything seem like it's together and color individually in those objects, or even put little chibi faces on would be a cute option. So there's other directions to go in, of course. But I do plan on like live feeding some, like I said, holiday pieces and some other videos. So I'm really just going to focus on her and finishing her in this video. That way I can rip the tape and show you the edges and stuff. And again, painter's tape, and it's definitely highly recommended for this. So the next bit, her hair is pretty good. I'm gonna go to the background, like I said. I'm gonna see if I can add a darker yellow out first before I do that. And I don't think I'm gonna use marker. I'm gonna go back to paint. So I'm gonna go back to grabbing a round brush. I'm gonna wet that. And I think I'm just gonna use one of my just regular yellows with no white. So that. Kind of add some water to my palette. And again, if you want to use your mister, you can. But I'm doing mixed media today, so I'm trying to be careful of my water usage. And I'm just gonna start coloring in some, these details. Love illustrating, so relaxing. And it doesn't always have to have like a long story. It's okay to illustrate short stories or scenes. So it doesn't always have to be like a full character like blast, like their whole backstory and things like that. It can just be partials. And I'm just masking in the rest of this blouse so that way I can do some shadows on this. Just using regular titanium white to do this part. just finished drying up the white. Like I think we need to just do a bluish or gray color to get my shadows. And just like before, start off light, work my way up. So there's my first shadow color. Still a little wet in some areas, but still dry enough in my heat gun, or still drying from the heat gun. So I'm still able to use my pencil to get some texture. So now let me see here. And all I'm doing is just trying to make it look lighter on top. So I'm going back in with some medium tones and going over every other hair strand to create effects of highlights and stuff like that. And, trying my hardest not to go too far up. I want to seem like I'm haloing, like a halo effect around her face. Now I do need a few shadows up here, just not a lot. And still creating shapes, making sure things look like parenthesis marks and circular and things like that. Just carving out some shapes here and there. And then working my way back down. So that will get right in here. Once we get these medium tones in, I might fiddle with some darker tones, but I'm just working my way there very slowly. And of course, if you do any digital art, you're probably familiar with this too, to like toggle and put in different levels of brown to make it look just like this, only with those tones. And again, I'm still swatching. Always still have your swatch paper to the side just to test the color. At this point, you don't have to have just a brush tip. You could be using chiseled or your regular round tip. Use the gel pens that I mentioned earlier. I don't have many things I'm going to be using gel pen on this one because, like I said, my usual habit is if it's white, leave it that way if you can. So I'm just going to add a few lines over here. These are like, Honestly, sometimes they're necessary, but I've seen some anime artists where it's definitely for style reasons that they even have the amount of highlights that they do. But I definitely think lip highlights, nose highlights are very necessary. Add a few on the hair if you can. It helps break up the space a little bit too. Interact with your eye in some different areas. If you need to brighten an area where you went a little too dark and you think some highlights will pull it back, you can do that. Um, I usually don't return to black. That's not a color that I'm like very skeptical of using it. But if you had to go back to something that dries pretty fast, and doesn't bleed, I would use, if you want something alcohol based, if you can, or something that's light fast drying. And I like the ribbons the way they were. I was considering, like I had said in the beginning, there were some ideas and swatches about coloring these, but I ended up liking the white and the way it looks next to her hair. See, I can still put around the black lines if I need to. But some things, if they softened, actually are helping the piece, so I'm not re-outlining the whole thing. And like I said too, with the some styles, maybe that's not true and you have to, because that would make it look more like the original artist's idea. But it's okay for something to be a little bit original. I'm actually a huge fan of fan art because it shows you a different perspective, or more outfits of the same character, which is also kind of cool. There's some animes that are like really good about switching up outfits though, so or showing a different look when they age. Like one of my only largest complaints is like ones like Inuyasha and some like the characters apparently are changing or older, but they don't really change much. There's no shape differences or anything like that between a kid and an adult. So sometimes some of the adults look kind of creepy because they look like little kids. And again, this blouse isn't part of this blouse, so I am taking the time to re-outline it so that way it looks separate and part of layers. So again, don't need to trace everything, but a few things it does help lead the viewer's eye. So you want to do it if you can, make that part of the storytelling process. That's the inside of the shirt. So I did the signature hash marks for some shadows. So another note to make is that not all the time shadows is because of color, but or differences in lighting can actually use passion and other techniques for shadows when it comes to these anime styles or cartoon styles. You get some other options. So definitely always play around with those and see what you're more comfortable with. And I feel like the hair is very well done and done. Put some differences in the shadows in this bonnet. It looks stay on the outside of this fluffy outfit. That's the other thing too, like, if you trace, like I did in the beginning of this piece, if you wanted to make a Halloween version or a Christmas version or a pink version, a blue version, and retry it, that's a really good way of testing your style and seeing what how you like something, or if you're not certain how it's gonna come out, that you still need the line work. And I say the same thing with the digital art as well, is save the original outline and sketches so you can reload them again. And that's of course copycatting the traditional way of using a whiteboard. So that way you can re-hover in your sketches, so don't save those all together and make sure that's separate. I actually tell a lot of the students, you can take something out of your sketchbook and trace it and then color it on another page. Which is also why a lot of sketchbooks have built-in tracing paper in it, so you can do that. It's just transfer or going over and experiment. These are gonna be my last details. So you'll find this continent more than one place. But that's it. I'm going to go ahead and rip the tape so you can see how that looks. So this is my after. So see textures, ink, and this is definitely counts as a nice mixed media piece. So all the colors and the depth. So you got your pencil, your marker, your pencil lining, you got shading with it, you got marker in multiple shades here. Highlighting, the white gel pen was like not used a lot, but it's really great for like small details like the eyes and around the hair. So different size tools definitely really matter. But yes, this is the finished piece. And remember, this was this was the coloring sheet for inspiration. And as you see, I softened a lot of things. Like you can play with this and totally make a really cool piece, or put faces and things like that on some of these floating items. I chose not to do that, and I softened the background. So I definitely want people to, like, you look at this for inspiration, and you can definitely, take the scissors to it and make something completely original out of it. But, I can keep this and make something else entirely out of it. But this is the finished piece without the liner. And so you can see you can make a completely pretty piece. But this is on watercolor paper, so it's a lot heavier. It's a really nice paper for using gouaches, markers, and as you can see, like buckling and things like that, it dries really quickly, holds onto that medium really well. But yeah, what I usually do is keep them together, so that way I'm like, oh, here's the original liner. So when I stuff these away into storage, we can get the sketch back out and make something else.